Welcome back, friends. My name is BigWynter, and today I've got your weekly roundup of gaming's biggest news stories and leaks. So let's waste none of your time today and jump right into story number one. And it has got to be the massive Sony announcement around the PS5 Pro. Almost a full 4 years since the original PS5 was released. In true Sony tradition, a Pro version has just been announced, and the internet seems to be in a full fistfight about it. Just hours since the release, the YouTube announcement video has become Sony's most disliked video, with over 141,000 dislikes in a single day. Much of this outrage has come surrounding the announced price tag for the Pro model, starting at $700 for the digital version. Even accounting for inflation, it is the most expensive console that they have ever released and is about $220 more than the PS5 digital edition at launch, again counting for inflation. Further outrage is sparked as the disc drive and the stand for the console are being sold separately in a fashion very reminiscent of Apple. So if fans want to pick these up, you can expect to pay another $80 to $100. And it's not just the US that are mad about the price tag, as the conversion rates around the console sales are some of the worst we've seen. The console is going for £700 or 800 euros in Europe, and the equivalent of $847 in Japan, which seems oddly backwards. But why such a steep cost, and is it really that steep? Taking a look at the new machine, we actually see a fairly substantial buff in hardware and software, allowing the console to perform much more reliably in the 4K 60 FPS range for compatible titles. Sony is claiming a 45% boost in rendering power and 67% more computing units relative to the base PS5, which, if true, is actually really impressive. Whether or not it's worth the upgrade if you already have a PS5 is honestly probably unlikely, but despite much of the backlash, experts actually predict the console will sell pretty damn well. But moving on to our next story, we've had some pretty huge changes to one of the most successful games of the year, or rather, the most successful DLC. Shadow of the Erdtree, this year's Elden Ring DLC, was met primarily by enormous praise, although after a few weeks, a few issues were highlighted within the game, especially relating to the final boss battle, the enemy name of which I won't mention to save you from some spoilers. Most notably, the boss's moveset has now been altered to allow for more windows of attack without being punished, and many attacks no longer do quite as much damage. The visibility of some attacks were improved, and most controversially, the inflated hitboxes have been reduced to be more forgiving and in line with their actual character model. Outside of just the final boss, we've also seen a huge number of changes relating to the balancing of many weapons, spells, and skills, especially within the PvP side of the game, which I am too scared to dive into. But these changes do raise a somewhat interesting question. FromSoft games are well known for being some of the most difficult available, and it is safe to say that these changes definitely make the game easier to complete. Personally, I love the challenge of FromSoft games, but I think Elden Ring does an amazing job of allowing the player to make the game as hard or as easy as necessary and gives you the tools to do so. I love a difficult boss battle, and finally beating one after you've been spending countless attempts on it has to be one of the greatest feelings in gaming. But honestly, if that level of difficulty is achieved by misleading the players with artificially larger hitboxes than visible, then it does feel like you're being somewhat cheated. So whilst I agree with the hitbox changes, I'm not so sure on the easier moveset. What do you think? But now onto some possibly alarming news. Microsoft are at it again with the layoffs. You might remember a couple of weeks ago, we had a story on the channel relating to some Microsoft layoffs, specifically looking at the Tango acquisition by Krafton, which would keep certain IPs like Hi-Fi Rush still alive. Layoffs seem to be the theme of the year, as we had over 1,900 employees let go by Microsoft after the Activision and Blizzard acquisition previously, with other companies like Sony, EA, and Riot laying off 900, 670, and 530 staff members respectively this year alone. So when I saw another 650 jobs were being let go by Microsoft, my heart just sunk a little for the industry as a whole. However, looking a little further into this, it has been reported that these 650 jobs were mostly corporate and supporting functions, and whilst I don't really like hearing that anybody has to lose their jobs and livelihoods, it comes as some relief to hear that these layoffs would not be affecting any ongoing projects in development. So let's hope that with these layoffs, the trend comes to a close for the year. But enough of the sadness, and now onto our quickfire round of shorter stories, games releases, and leaks. Let's take a look at Warhammer's Space Marine 2. Less than a week since the game's release, things seem to be getting better and better. A Steam post went public on the 10th of September, thanking the community for over 2 million players within the first few days. With over 225,000 peak players in the last 4 days alone, it is very safe to say that the flattering early reviews were not just blowing smoke, and the game has delivered. My only hope is that the PvP and campaign side of things are enough to keep the players returning to the game so that it does not meet a similar backseat role, much like the early 2024 release of Helldivers 2. Steam are back in the spotlight again after the Steam Families feature has just made itself public. With the new updated feature, families of up to 5 will be able to share game libraries, allowing members to play different games at the same time. Plus, if 2 copies of the same game are present, then 2 members could play that together. The only issue some members have commented on is all party to that Steam family account must be within the same country, which is sad news for those with distant relatives overseas. I can see why this might be the case, case, but let's just hope for an update or a workaround that finds its way in. After more than 5 years in early access, Satisfactory is finally making its way to full release. I wish I knew more about what constitutes early access, but it seems insane that a game is allowed to have such a tag despite the sheer length of time it's in early access. Surely it's better to just hold the game back from release until it's much closer to being actually finished, but what do I know? I don't make games. To celebrate the full release, Coffee Stain Studios are providing a 10% discount until the 24th of September, so go grab it now if it is your cup of tea. And finally here, one of the best games I've played over the last couple of years is finally making its way to PC. God of War Ragnarok, previously a PS5 exclusive, will be making its full release on Steam on the 19th of September, and I would wholeheartedly recommend it to everyone as it absolutely bangs. So if you do pick it up, hop back to this video and let me know what you think. But that's it for me today. Drop a like and sub if you've enjoyed, and ding that bell for next week's episode. Thank you so much for watching. Take care out there, and much love.